Good morning, everyone. My name is Councillor Stephen Holliday. I'm the chair of the Audit Committee. We have quorum. I'm now calling meeting 3 to order. Welcome, everyone. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and in person at City Hall in Committee Room 1. The meeting is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. Although we may be meeting in different locations today, the Audit Committee would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. If you are registered to speak at today's meeting, please listen for me to call your name. I will call speakers in the order that they appear on the list. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Audit Committee link at toronto.ca/council. and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. I am told that we have no speakers registered for today's meeting thus far. Members, the City Clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and on the CMP, the Clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are available to members if you need help with your devices. I also want to remind you to please submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at Audit Committee, AUDITCTTE, at toronto.ca to help with motions. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you do have an interest, please raise your hand and unmute your mic and indicate the item number and the nature of the interest. Seeing none, we will proceed. May I have a motion to confirm the minutes from our meeting on July 7th, 2023? All right, Councillor Nunziata moves. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Members, we have 14 items on our agenda and an item of new business items to excuse me. No problem, Mr. Clerk. We have 14 items on our agenda, and so we will go through them. First item is AU 3.1, Auditor General's Office 2024 Audit Work Plan. There is a presentation, and thus that will be held. AU 3.2 is Audit of the Toronto Transit Commission's Streetcar Overhead Assets, strengthening the maintenance and repair program to minimize asset failures and service delays. Are there any members with questions on this item or wishing to hold it? May I have a member move the recommendations? Which is for City Council to receive the item. Yes, Councillor Casanti moves the recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. AU 3.3 is Toronto Transit Commission Cybersecurity Audit Phase 2 Overall Network Security and Cybersecurity Assessment of Select Critical Systems. Are there any members with questions on this item or anyone wishing to speak to it? Seeing none, may I have a member move the recommendations, which is, Mr. Clerk, to... Yep. This is to keep confidential material confidential. Okay. Is there a member wishing to move this? Otherwise, I'll move it. Councillor Nunziata moves. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. Oh, I apologize, Mr. Clerk. We need to reopen that. I do have a brief motion on that. Sure. Yeah. Pardon me, members. I'm just going to move to reopen that. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. It's a very simple motion. Do we have it ready? I'll just paraphrase it. City Council will direct the clerk to forward a copy of this to the city's Chief Information and Security Officer. It's the joy of working digitally. Sometimes there's 3 pieces of paper to look at. We good, Mr. Clerk? Okay, on the amendment, all those in favor? Any opposed? The amendment carries. On the item as amended with the original clause, all those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. AU 3.4 is Audit of the Enterprise Work Management Solution, EWMS, lessons learned for future large information technology projects. There is a presentation on this item, and thus I will hold this item in my name. AU 3.5 is Update on Winter Maintenance Program Follow-Up, Change in Contract Terms. Are there members wishing to hold this item for questions?
Yes, I do.
Councillor Fletcher will hold the item for questions, so we will get to that in a moment. AU 3.6 is the status update on the citywide risk governance model. Mr. Clerk, I have a brief motion on that. And if we need time, we can hold it down. Just let me know. The clerk's advising it'll just take a second, so I'll paraphrase it for my colleagues. It is really asking for a follow-up report to come back in a year's time. It uses similar language to the original request, so I can read it out as the clerk prepares it. City Council requests the City Manager, in coordination with the Chief Technology Officer, the Chief Information Security Officer, the Director of Office Emergency Management, and Director of Internal Audit, to report to the Audit Committee in the third quarter of 2024 with an update on the implementation and maturation of enterprise risk management. And there's a second bullet point, and that is that the City Council requests the City Manager, in coordination with the Director, Internal Audit, to work with division heads to expand the inclusion of risk management considerations into reports provided to committees and council as applicable. And so this really just asks to further mature our program and to come back and see Audit Committee in about a year. And if the opportunity presents itself, that we will talk about risk management in our reports to council and committees. I hope you're confident in that motion, and all those in favor of the amendment. Any opposed? That carries. And on the item as amended, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. AU 3.7. Yep. AU 3.7 is the status update on Information Technology Disaster Recovery Program. Are there any members with questions on this item? Are there any members wishing to speak to it? Okay. I also have a very brief motion, very similar to the original request to bring this motion here. I'm just asking for an update to come back to us in 1 year's time. And I'll read it out. City Council requests the Chief Technology Officer, in coordination with the Chief Information Security Officer and Director, Office of Emergency Management, to report to the Audit Committee in the third quarter of 2024 on the status and progress of the Information Technology Disaster Recovery Plan from each City of Toronto division, agency, and corporation. The status update should also be reported for City of Toronto's Corporate Technology Services Disaster Recovery Plan, including business continuity and cyber major incident. And although the contents are on confidential paper, I will just express my thanks to staff and those that participated in this report, and I look forward to hearing additional information in 1 year's time. On the amendment, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And on the item as amended, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that is carried. AU 3.8 is the KPMG Management Letter Recommendations, Update on Action Plans. Are there any members with questions on this item? Anyone wishing to speak to it? Okay, may I have a member of the committee move the recommendations? Councillor Crisante moves the recommendations, which is to receive the report for information. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. AU 3.9 is the KPMG Management Letter for the City of Toronto with management responses for the period ending December 31st, 2022. So this is a receipt for information. Are there any members wishing to hold this for questions or to speak to it? Seeing none, may I have a member move to receive it for information? Just give me a moment here until I can see anyone online wishing to move it? Councillor Fletcher moves it for information. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. AU 3.10 Community Centers 2022 Audited Financial Statements, Report Number 2. Are there any members wishing to ask questions of staff? Anyone wishing to speak to it? Would someone like to move the recommendation, which is that City Council receive the financial statements? Vice Chair Myers moves. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. A 3.11 Arenas 2022, 2021, and 2020 Audited Financial Statements and Status of Outstanding 2022 and Prior Audited Financial Statements. So there are 3 recommendations here from the Auditor General, which is essentially to receive. Any members wishing to ask questions? Any members wishing to speak? May I have someone move the recommendations? Councillor Nunziata moves the recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. AU 3.12, request for retroactive authorization to appoint Kwok and Associate for external audit services for North Toronto Memorial Arena. Are there any members with questions of staff? Any members wishing to speak on this item? May I have a member move that City Council grant authority retroactively to the Auditor General to appoint Kwok and Associate to perform the financial statement audits for North Toronto Memorial Arena for the years ending December 31st, 2021 and December 31st, 2022 through a non-competitive procurement process? Anyone wishing to move that? Very well. Vice Chair Myers, thank you, moves that. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. AU 3.13, letter from City Council on item EX 6.16, Casa Loma Corporation 2022 Annual General Meeting and Audited Financial Statements. Members, I believe we considered this, so it's come from City Council to us. So, Mr. Chair, this is to receive? All right. Any members wishing to ask questions on this item? Anyone wishing to speak? May I have someone move receipt? Councillor Nunziata moves receipt. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. In a similar vein, AU 3.14, letter from City Council on item EX 6.17, Lakeshore Arena Corporation 2022 Audited General Meeting and Audited Financial Statements. This is to receive. May I have a member move that, please? Councillor Nunziata moves. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. Okay, back up to the top of the list. AU 3.1, Auditor General's Office 2024 Audit Work Plan and Budget Highlights. Welcome, Madam Auditor General, to the podium. And we'll just bear with us for a moment as we get everything set up. And Madam Auditor, please begin as soon as you're ready.
Okay, we're ready to go. Okay, so thank you, Chair. This presentation is on my office's 2024 work plan. I'd like to acknowledge and thank my team, which includes Ariane Chan, Assistant Auditor General, Ina Chan, Deputy Auditor General, Matthew Crisafulli, Senior Audit Manager, as well as the rest of our executive team and all of our staff who contributed their ideas and suggestions. Next slide. During this presentation, I will cover how our audits are selected and coverage of our past reports, and walk through our 2024 work plan, including key areas of audit focus for this year, projects in progress or starting in 2024, and projects on the horizon for 2025, a summary as well as other significant work for my office. My report also highlights the 2024 budget request for our office. I am providing this to Audit Committee for information only as you consider my office's 2024 work plan. My 2024 budget request will go directly to the Budget Committee for consideration in January 2024. For 2024, I am requesting a budget of $7.991 million, which represents approximately 0.05% of the city's 2023 operating budget and remains among the lowest of major municipalities across Canada, as well as those of a number of municipalities in the United States. It also reflects that we've been able to staff up to almost full staff complement, a headcount of 43. However, it did take longer than expected this year. If approved, I feel that my 2024 budget request is sufficient to cover the work outlined in my 2024 work plan. Just to note that if councillors either request through a motion that I consider an additional audit or vote with 2/3 majority resolution to add an audit to my plan, I would need to delay an audit currently on my plan in order to do that additional work. Before we walk through my office's 2024 work plan, I think it's important to keep in mind how we select audits to be included. Our office conducts a citywide risk and opportunities assessment every 5 years, and the risk factors used are outlined in Appendix 2 of our report, which include factors such as financial significance, cybersecurity and IT exposure, public interest, and adequacy of controls. We update our risk assessment every year for any emerging issues and trends, including trends and allegations received through our fraud and waste hotline. We also consider input from city management and councillors, and we use the knowledge we've developed through our previous audits and follow-up work. We aim to have audit coverage across the various city divisions, agencies, and corporations. Next slide. This slide shows the coverage we've achieved over the past 5 years with our reports. You can see that we've had breadth in our coverage and also more in-depth coverage on certain areas, including technology services, transportation services, Toronto Transit Commission, and shelter support and housing administration. You can find a listing of our past reports issued from 2019 to 2023 in Appendix 3 of our report. For 2024, we plan to continue our focus on key areas such as housing and community, cybersecurity and IT, emergency response services, and infrastructure and transit. We've also included audits relating to procurement and contracts. It's important to note that the 2024 work plan is intended to be flexible, allowing the Auditor General to respond to emerging issues, including the need to assign resources to investigations into high-risk allegations when needed. On this slide, you can see in blue font those projects that are in progress currently or will be started by the end of this year of 2023. For many of these, we're currently nearing the end of our planning phase, and for the Toronto Building Audit, we are in the reporting phase. The remaining projects shown on this slide in black font are those that we plan to start in 2024. Next slide. This slide outlines the projects we have on our horizon and aim to start in either late 2024 or early 2025, depending on priorities and available resources. And just to note, with regards to public library, this was on our horizon in last year's plan, and I'm sure you're aware that unfortunately they did experience a cyber incident. They are currently working with their cybersecurity and other experts to resolve this, and the timing of our work will depend on our review of their experts' report, the related risks, and our other priorities and resourcing. Next slide. So here's a summary of our 2024 work plan and our horizon. So by key focus area for housing and community, as I mentioned, this continues to be a priority for the city. We're currently nearing the end of our planning phase of our audit of short-term rentals and municipal accommodation tax, as well as our parks operational review. We'll soon be starting an audit of warming centers, and on our audit horizon, we have audits on supportive housing, affordable rental housing, and capital planning and delivery at the Toronto Community Housing Corporation and Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation. For the second area, we will continue our focus on cybersecurity and IT with cybersecurity audits at TCHC, Toronto Hydro, and Toronto Public Library, with our follow-up of Toronto Police Service on the horizon. In addition, we plan to soon start an audit of software acquisition and license utilization, a major IT project, and on the horizon, we have an audit of Toronto Police Services, IT governance and infrastructure. For the third area, infrastructure and transit, continues to be another key area of focus for us this year. We'll be presenting our audit report on Toronto Building Plan Review and Customer Service at the upcoming February 2024 Audit Committee, and we plan to soon start an audit of TTC's workforce planning and management. During 2024, we will start an audit of utility cuts, and on the horizon, we plan to audit the areas of road maintenance, so that includes pothole repairs, street construction and utility work, a major capital project of corporate real estate management, and an operational review of the TTC. We're also continuing our focus this year on emergency response services, following from the audits we conducted of Toronto Police Service. We're nearing the end of our planning phase of an audit of Toronto Paramedic Services, which will be followed by an audit of the Toronto Fire Services next year. And on the horizon, we have an audit of Toronto Police Service, focusing on special events and paid duty officers. Lastly, we have added a focus area of procurement and contracts this year to emphasize the importance of prudent financial management at the city. And we're nearing the end of our planning phase of an audit on unsolicited proposals looking at the Pay It platform, and we'll soon be starting an audit examining low dollar value purchases, including the use of pay cards and payments. In 2024, we will audit the MLSE contract for the FIFA World Cup 2026, and have a citywide audit of purchase order amendments on our horizon. We also plan to start doing some continuous controls monitoring work in 2024, using data analysis techniques to provide periodic reports for management to proactively monitor financial transactions, detect unusual expenses, and identify areas where internal controls could be further strengthened. We also have an extensive backlog of 75 potential audit projects, so there's no shortage of work, and you can find this backlog listing in Exhibit 1 of our report. Next slide. In addition to our audits, we also have other significant areas of work. This includes our recommendation follow-up. We have a significant number of outstanding recommendations, and management have self-assessed about 45% of those as fully implemented. So our follow-up process includes verifying those recommendations that management has self-assessed as fully implemented, focusing on those that are high priority. And high priority recommendations either have cost savings attached to them, are considered higher risk in terms of safety and other risk factors, or have been outstanding longer than 5 years. For this year, we plan to focus on the Toronto Transit Commission, corporate real estate management, transportation services, purchasing and materials management, Parks, Forestry and Recreation, and Toronto Police Service. For our fraud and waste hotline that we operate, we expect to see a continuing high volume of complaints. As of October 31st of this year, we had 940 complaints, representing more than 1,250 allegations. Based on this volume, the hotline could receive approximately 1,130 complaints by year end. Our forensic unit also conducts investigations into high-risk allegations and follows up on those referred to divisions for investigation. We anticipate that the need for complex and in-depth forensic investigations will continue and expand. It's important to note that we often need to supplement these teams with our audit staff, and at times this can sometimes delay some of our audit projects. Also to note, for 2024, we will also have our external peer review. This is when the auditors are audited. My office follows generally accepted government auditing standards, and those standards require audit organizations performing audit and attestation engagements to have an external peer review performed by independent reviewers at least once every 3 years, and it's also a requirement of Chapter 3 of the Municipal Code. This review will cover projects completed during the 3-year period from January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2023, and the opinion letter received on the overall results of the review will be reported to Council through the Audit Committee. So to recap, the audit selected for my office's 2024 work plan keep pace with risks and emerging issues, consider input received, including any City Council motions to date, and provide coverage across the city and its agencies and corporations, with the goal to continue to assist City Council in holding management accountable to achieve value for money in city operations and to help the city to make a positive difference in the lives of Torontonians and add value to the city, including continued cost savings. So thank you for your time, and I'll now take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Madam Auditor. I will ask the committee if there are questions. Councillor Nunziata, and in a moment, I'll see the online.
As far as the 652 outstanding recommendations, you mentioned that you would review all the recommendations that were implemented, and would the savings reflect in the 2024 budget for the various recommendations that were approved and implemented?
So through the chair, so for any recommendations that have been implemented where there's cost savings, the divisions are required to reflect that in their budget where that is appropriate to do so. There are sometimes circumstances where it's cost avoidance or there's other reasons why it doesn't hit the budget, or sometimes it can be a timing issue. But we do report on all of that in our annual report, which will be coming to Audit Committee in February of 2024.
So the outstanding recommendations, 652, what are they? The outstanding recommendations?
So they cover various divisions and agencies and corporations, and so we will be providing a report on our follow-up work next year.
Okay.
Yeah, with further detail.
Okay, you mentioned your audit will also cover potholes. So what would the audit, what would you be auditing as far as potholes?
Okay, so that audit is yet to begin, and it is on the horizon. So I can't really say it exactly at this point, but in terms of the operations around road maintenance, including pothole repairs.
Okay, so you're just going to review the timing of the potholes repairs or the calls that come in?
So in our audit, through the chair, through our audit planning, we'll consider any feedback that you have on what you'd like to see potentially included in the audit scope, because we haven't started it yet. And so when we do our audit planning, we look at all the risks, and then we consider what makes sense in terms of our audit objectives, criteria, and our scope.
So under housing and community, you've got short-term rentals. Mm-hmm. Can you just elaborate a bit on that, what your audit is on short-term rentals?
Sure. Do you want to take that one? So through the chair, so this is Ariane Chan, Assistant Auditor General. She's helping to lead that project.
Okay.
Through the chair, we are nearing the audit planning, the end of audit planning phase for the short-term rentals audit. And through the audit, we're planning to look at how the timeliness of the municipal accommodation tax, how they are reporting it, how they're the timeliness of the remission of that. And also through the short-term rentals program, we're looking at the compliance of that, the implementation of the program.
As far as the short-term rentals, like the bylaws and, enforcement?
Yeah, we're looking at the compliance.
That'd be part of it?
Yes. So through the two, either the operators, the short-term rental operator or the short-term rental companies, we're looking at the compliance of the bylaw.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nunziata. Councillor Crisanti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Auditor, first of all, I want to say what a wonderful job your office does. It's just phenomenal. This is an area that we really need to continue to focus on. We're looking for better ways of doing things all the time, finding efficiencies. So just in follow-up to Councillor Nunziata's question on the 652 outstanding recommendations, I don't think we have the time to go through each and every one. So do you happen to have some idea of what, in terms of the total of these recommendations, what would the total efficiencies look like in terms of savings in dollars?
So through the chair, so the recommendations we focus on for verifying are those that are high priority, include those that have cost savings attached to them. When we come back with our annual report, we will highlight all of those, including the cost savings, as well as if we feel there's any money being left on the table if recommendations have not been fully implemented yet. So we will be providing a fulsome report of that in the near future. And in terms of the divisions and agencies I mentioned we're focusing on, those are the ones where we feel that it's worth the time to have a look at those to check if they have indeed been fully implemented. So I mentioned.
Do you want to add something?
Did you want to add something?
There you go, you got a number right there.
Okay. So of the 652 open recommendations, 356 are showing as high priority. Or sorry, of the 356 open that are still in progress, 190 of them are considered high priority.
Okay, and define what high priority means?
So high priority can either mean it has cost savings attached to it, or it is high risk in terms of safety or other risk factors, or it's been outstanding more than 5 years.
Okay. Yeah, that's a concern. If it's outstanding more than 5 years, then we're not working together to take advantage of those cost savings. What can we do to ensure that we tighten up that timeframe? And you know, is there anything we could do to ensure that the recommendations must be, must be adopted in a reasonable timeframe?
So through the chair, we do have our regular follow-up work, which I believe provides some incentive in terms of making sure that when management says it's fully implemented, it truly is fully implemented. In terms of the ones that have been outstanding for a longer period of time, there could be motions that you make in terms of having report backs to Audit Committee, and that has happened in the past before for certain areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just back to the slide, the work plan slide, the 24-25 work plan. At the bottom of that chart, it says that there's over 75 projects currently on backlog.
That's correct.
Can you just explain what that means?
Right, so through the chair, as we do our risk assessment and come up with potential ideas for potential audit projects, we have a very long list. And so that list is included in our backlog for those that we think are worth doing as audit projects. We have a finite amount of resources to be able to do a certain number of audits every year, but if we could get to everything, that's, you know, we would get to those on the backlog as well. So it's just flagging that we've considered those areas and that we think they are worth looking at if the resources were available to do those.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions from my colleagues online? Councillor
Yes, I do,
Fletcher.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you. Just on following up on Councillor Crisanti, just quickly, the ones that you've put forward here, 24, work plan 25 around it, you're indicating those are the top critical issues that need to be dealt with immediately, correct?
Through the chair, yes, those are the ones that have bubbled up to the top in terms of our risk assessment.
You're using your risk assessment, and I think, and I know they're not in any order here, but I just want to talk about a few things. One is the IT risks that we face, having had 2 breaches now, the library and TTC, and what global approach you might be taking as far as risk assessment rather than individual divisions or corporations. Is there an approach that isn't singular, or is the singular approach also married up to something that you would say would be a citywide approach around risk management with IT, cybersecurity being pretty high on the agenda?
So hopefully I've heard that correctly. Through the chair, so our
Well, we've
audits
had 2
have,
breaches, so
sorry, what's that?
yeah, sorry. We've had 2 major breaches of 2 big corporations. So we know there's risks out there, and I see you're doing one by one, but I'm just wondering if there's an overarching risk management that everybody needs to understand and be part of.
Sure. So through the chair, my understanding is in terms of citywide risk management related to cybersecurity, there's now the CISO, and he is here in the room, and I believe he has a certification program in place. He could speak more to it in terms of looking at risks across citywide, and I believe including agencies as well. So for our audit plan, we look at particular ones where we think it's worth taking that deeper dive, but the CISO would have responsibility on a citywide basis.
Thank you. I'm not going to ask questions today there. The second just is on the pay it and the unsolicited proposals. You're looking at the unsolicited proposals. Are you also looking at, by any chance, the procurement side of an unsolicited proposal?
Through the chair, we will be looking at the procurement related to the Pay It platform.
Okay, thank you. And in utility cuts, is this for everything? Is this for Toronto Water? Is this for all of the infrastructure, Bell and gas and everybody else? And is it looking at the timelines after a utility cut and getting back to normal pavement? What exactly are you looking at with utility cuts?
So through the chair, that audit has not yet started, so we need to still, understand everything and gather our risks and develop our audit objectives and scope. But yes, it would be looking at many things, and we'll consider your input or any input prior to the planning of that audit.
Yes, it's an important audit. And then with you're looking at TPS special events paid duty, and I'm assuming that with the protocol that you're able to do that. And are you going to be looking at the fact that many major street events are having trouble being sustaining themselves with the cost of paid duty? And will you be looking at the requirements for paid duty as to who's determining that risk, or just why there is such a proliferation of paid duty at events on the street and other places?
So through the chair, again, that audit is on our horizon, so we have not yet started it, but I'll consider your feedback for that, and consider your feedback. Thank you.
And when you're looking, I'll just go for the ones you're on now, TCHC and Toronto Hydro, for cybersecurity risk. Is there a particular reason? I see Toronto Public Library is third down there, but now they've had a breach, so maybe you have to move that one up. But are those because you've determined that there's a weakness there, or you're just checking in to make sure that these critical corporations that have so much data about individuals are secure?
Yeah, so through the chair, it was actually through a council motion in terms of including Toronto Hydro and then TCHC, just in terms of looking at the information that they deal with and the security risk there. And Toronto Public Library, as I mentioned, it was actually on our horizon before. Unfortunately, they experienced a cyber incident, so they are dealing with that right now. Otherwise, we would be there and doing work. So we'll have a look at their experts' report and then take it from there in terms of potential work.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Are there any other questions? Because I've got a couple. All right. I'll time myself. Madam Auditor, I want to clarify. This is in a way like informing the committee about your budget submission. So you're going to ask for more money, is what you say in the report. Can you tell us why you need more money? A little bit more. Maybe I'll qualify it with that.
So
What's driving those increased costs?
So through the chair, so there is a slight increase in the budget of, I believe it's 4.9%. Ina Chan, Deputy Auditor General, is online, so she can help to correct me if I didn't get that right. And so it is due to the increase in the salary bands that were implemented, and we are near full staff complement now. So if we were to not have that increase, we would be looking at either not being able to fill any vacancies that could arise in 2024, or needing to look at reduction in staff, which would affect the number of our audits that we could do.
Okay, so you're not growing the Auditor General's office. You are dealing with, I think, salary increases that is customary everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, are you offsetting or are you mitigating those increases in any way?
So we did take a reduction in the professional services contracts line of about 200,000 to just be fiscally prudent in that area. However, that means about 2 cybersecurity assessments for the year because of the cost of hiring those experts.
My editorial read, correctly if I'm wrong, my opinion, is that it seems that at the end of the day, you're shrinking your capacity because you are dealing with natural increases in salary, but you actually have a smaller budget now for consulting outsourcing that you use to deal with your audits. Is that a fair read?
Through you, Chair. I'm not sure I'd say that we're shrinking, but we're definitely not we're not growing our staff numbers. So our approved staff headcount is 44, and we're currently at 43 staff.
But your capacity to hire consulting is shrinking a little bit.
Yes.
And so can you assure the committee that that's being done, that approach to budgeting, right? You're asking essentially for less, even though the number's higher.
Right.
That's being done in the context of the overall city budget.
Yes, so through the chair, we want to be fiscally prudent, and so we're being conservative in terms of our budget request for this next year.
Okay. I also wanted to just clarify, we talked a little bit through the questions about some very large numbers, 600 and change outstanding audit recommendations. Can you just recap a little bit to the committee about the process that's used and what's changed with respect to keeping track of those? And also anything that you've observed with respect to the divisions that are putting resources into dealing with those large numbers of outstanding requirements that are applicable to each of the business units within the Toronto Public Service.
Sure, so through the chair, so we now have a software called Teammate, and so now management can put their actions that they've taken or updating their actions planned against each of those individual recommendations as they go along. So we don't have to wait for a certain period of the year for them to be able to do that. So we can know at any time then how many recommendations are outstanding or have been fully implemented according to management self-assessment. And they are working to implement those. So about 45%, as I mentioned, have been fully implemented according to management's self-assessment. And so there is progress that's being made, but of course, as you know, Councillor Crescendi pointed out, there could always be further progress as well.
All right, I'm just going to stop for a moment, if you may. I'm not sure if you finished your answer, but the clerk informed me the video feed dropped. So we just want to pause the meeting for a quick moment to sort out the technical issue.
Sure, no problem.
Sorry for the interruption, Madam Auditor. We can proceed.
Okay.
Was there anything you wanted to add to the answer?
I think that was it, yeah.
Okay. Are there any remaining questions of the Auditor General from anyone else on the committee? Great, thank you. So our recommended disposition of this item is that we will recommend to City Council that they receive the Auditor General's 2024 work plan. Maybe I should just simply ask, are there any members looking to speak?
Just a question.
Councillor Nunziata?
No, not to speak, but so what we're moving is just to receive the work plan, not the budget.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. And it goes to City Council to receive. Yeah, I understand. If we could approve the budget, maybe we'd have a little more to talk about, but okay. May I have a member of the committee move the recommendations? Councillor Crescendi moves. All those in favor, any opposed, that item carries. Okay, the next item is AU 3.4, which is the audit of the Enterprise Work Management Solution, EWMS, lessons learned for future large information technology projects. Madam Auditor General, you have a presentation, so I'll give you a moment to prepare that, and please begin as soon as you're ready.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we're ready to get started.
Please proceed, Madam Auditor.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this presentation is on our audit report of the Enterprise Work Management Solution, also known as the EWMS program. I'd like to acknowledge and thank my team on this audit, Syed Ali, Assistant Auditor General, who will be helping me to present today, Gawa Mark, Audit Director, Cecilia Jiang, Senior Audit Manager, Andrew Krupovich, Senior Audit Manager, Susanna Chan, Senior Audit Manager, and Atif Karwa, Auditor. I'd also like to thank City Management and staff for their cooperation and assistance during this audit, and there were many from several divisions, including Sonia Brar, Alan Foster, and Mala Gautam from Technology Services, Barbara Gray from Transportation Services, Lou DiGeronimo from Toronto Water, Howie Dayton from Parks, Forestry and Recreation, Matt Kelleher from Solid Waste, Gary York from 311, David McIsaac and Dave Otter from PPEB, Genevieve Sharkey from Purchasing and Materials Management, and Anthony Young from Financial Planning. So thank you to all of you, and I'm sure there were many more, so thank you everyone for your help. Next slide. So we'll first provide some background on the EWMS program and its current status and some key statistics. Then we'll walk through our key audit findings and recommendations by our 4 themes, which you can see there. I'll then wrap up with some key points on moving forward and applying the lessons learned. Next slide. Since Toronto's 1998 amalgamation, the city divisions have used various systems to plan and track their work. Some of these systems are reaching end of life and were not designed to work across divisions in an integrated manner. And I understand that management's presentation following ours will give a little bit more context around the initiation of EWMS and how the program first stemmed from our audit report recommendations of Toronto Water in 2007 to integrate their work management systems. Auditor General audits in the years following also included recommendations for other divisions related to integration of their systems. And so in 2011, 4 city divisions formed a work management group to evaluate the feasibility of an enterprise-wide work management system that could be shared and integrated across the divisions for Toronto Water, Parks, Forestry and Recreation, Transportation Services, and Solid Waste Management Services. And then phase 1 of the EWMS program began in 2013, so 10 years ago. There's many benefits of the EWMS program, as you can see from those listed on the slide. The program is intended to improve work management processes across the 4 divisions, provide integration, including shared services of 311 and SAP, and it replaces legacy systems. The EWMS program can also improve service response times and efficiencies, resulting in financial benefits to the city. Next slide. Our audit examined how the EWMS program was planned and governed, including whether the program met its budget and timelines, the division's operational needs, and the overall program objectives. Next slide. The EWMS program includes 4 divisions and at least 20 business units. It's large and complex, and it's comprised of 3 phases. The focus of our audit scope was on phase 1, which started in 2013 and is scheduled to be completed by the end of this year, except for some Toronto Water and PF&R deliverables that were de-scoped from phase 1 and deferred to phases 2 and 3. In terms of the current implementation status, phase 1 is still in progress at the time of reporting, 10 years since the start date of the project, with the planning for phases 2 and 3 underway. The expected cost to complete all phases is $92.4 million with an estimated timeline of 2027. Solid Waste and Transportation Services have achieved phase 1, the go-live implementation of 1 business unit each, with formal project closure expected by the end of this year. Parks, Forestry and Recreation's initial go-live implementation dates have been delayed more than once, but are currently expected to be December of this year for 1 business unit. Toronto Water is still waiting for its implementation to start. Its phase 1 of 3 business units have been deferred and added to its 4 business units for phases 2 and 3, so now all 7 are being planned as part of EWMS phases 2 and 3. Next slide. Here are some of the key statistics as outlined in our audit at a glance and in our audit report. 10 years is the length of the project to date, and as mentioned, phase 1 is still in progress. The EWMS Phase 1 budget reported to the Executive Steering Committee is $52.3 million, and the expected cost to complete the original Phase 1 scope is $59.3 million for a variance of at least $7 million for Phase 1. The estimated costs by management for phases 2 and 3 are $33.1 million, resulting in a total estimated minimum cost of $92.4 million for the entire project. And with the project delays, there are not only continuing increased project costs, but also the cost of running legacy systems alongside EWMS, which is estimated at $14.1 million from 2021 to 2027. We also identified over $1 million in costs from unused EWMS licenses in the past 2 years due to the delays. Next slide, please. We'll now walk through our key audit findings and recommendations by these 4 themes we've identified: project planning, governance, execution, and risk management. Next slide. For the theme of project planning, we found that the program charter was not complete, program goals were not measured, and there was a lack of stakeholder communication and involvement. Next slide. So for the charter, we identified several improvements needed to ensure that it's complete, including a clear project timeline and budget, as well as the need to clearly specify whether the budget was for phase 1 alone or for the full program. The 8 charters include both the original EWMS program charter and 7 subordinate project charters for different divisions and functions that represented different scope elements. 5 of these 8 were not signed off by all the stakeholders. It is critical to have clear and agreed upon project timelines, budget, and deliverables from the outset. Next slide. There are 4 EWMS program goals: operational effectiveness, efficiency, customer service, and accountability. And performance measures were developed for the 2013 EWMS program charter. However, program management has not fully developed the metrics to assess these performance measures. The program management team should establish a performance measurement framework that is quantifiable and measurable. Next slide. It is critical to strengthen stakeholder involvement and communication. We found many examples of this, but are sharing 2 in particular given the impact of these ones. In the first example, EWMS integration with the city's enterprise-wide time reporting system was descoped from the phase 1 deliverables after spending approximately $65,000 on vendor work in 2020 because the city's pension, payroll, and employee benefits division's senior management did not approve the proposed integration. In another example, the city's legacy case management system for 311 was due to be replaced with a new system by 2021. Despite this expected transition to a new system, the integration of EWMS with the legacy system proceeded in 2018. The work was stopped in 2020 after spending approximately $266,000 because of the new customer relationship management solution in 2021. According to management, some of this work was leveraged to connect 311's new customer relationship management system with the EWMS. These examples highlight how important it is to obtain buy-in and engagement of all the stakeholders involved and impacted, and to communicate on a regular basis. So this is a summary of our recommendations to address our findings to improve project planning. And so there needs to be a complete program level charter, regular measurement of goals with corrective action as needed, and a technology services stakeholder management plan to help facilitate improved coordination and engagement with stakeholders. For the next theme of project governance, we found that the dashboard criteria for reporting need redesign. The status of the EWMS program needs to be accurate, consistent, and reported on a timely basis, and relevant prior Auditor General audit recommendations should be applied. Next slide. For technology services reporting on progress, we noted that although the dashboard has 5 performance metrics, there are only 3 traffic light criteria. Traffic light indicator criteria did not include definitions to measure the project benefits. However, benefits were presented to the Executive Steering Committee as green or good. These traffic light criteria should be revised to include all components of the dashboard and be quantifiable and measurable. So, for example, the budget is currently measured as the amount spent out of the forecasted budget. However, this may lead to cost overruns because the actual project progress based on deliverables is not currently considered when reporting the status of the budget versus the amount spent. For scope and schedule, although they are related, they're not the same and they should be separate criteria. And for program health, this rating is currently determined based solely on the total number of traffic light indicator colors shown on the dashboard. This can be misleading as it assumes that all risks are equally weighted. With regards to realizing the intended benefits, a one-time cost benefit assessment was performed in 2017, which we found did not have supporting calculations. During this audit, Technology Services was in the process of reviewing the benefits realization calculation method with each division and defining criteria to quantify and measure the benefits. According to the 2017 Cost Benefits Assessment, the EWMS Phase 1 investment was expected to provide an 11.8% return on investment and a payback period of 8.5 years based on a $38.9 million forecasted investment. This means that there would be lost benefits of $4.6 million annually if EWMS was not fully implemented at the 4 divisions by 2020. 6 years have passed since the cost benefits assessment was performed, and given the change in the amount of investment that has occurred, it should be reperformed considering the current budgeted costs and timelines, and the program management team should complete and update the cost benefit assessment for each phase and when any significant changes in costs and timelines occur. Next slide. The quarterly program status dashboard did not reflect the status and critical risks accurately, consistently, or on a timely basis. For example, the November 2022 program status dashboard showed everything as green or good. An example of accuracy would be the metric total progress. So that is calculated as the percentage of the total forecast budget spent. So the figure of 93% on the slide is calculated by dividing the actual spend of the $49.3 million by the forecast of $52.8 million. So that calculation does not consider project progress on deliverables. And during the audit, we noted that the implementation progress on deliverables was significantly lower than the percentage of progress indicated in the May 2023 dashboard. And so it was not accurate to report the status as green or good. In terms of timeliness, the vendor advised the city in November 2022 that increased costs would impact its ability to complete the remaining Phase 1 project deliverables. However, the program status dashboard for that time did not report that risk, and everything was shown as green or good. The risk was later reported in April 2023. In addition, PFNR Go Live, previously planned for November 2022, was delayed. However, that risk was not reported in the November 22 program status dashboard. Next slide, please. My office has issued several reports on technology project management and software license management and utilization. Prior audit recommendations need to be incorporated into Technology Services Project Governance Framework and applied to all IT projects to ensure consistent application across the city. And we've included a list of those reports and relevant recommendations in Exhibit 1 attached to our report. In summary, for project governance, Technology Services needs to establish a methodology to measure implementation progress against its budget and timeline, reassess benefits realization and potential losses, updating its cost-benefit assessment, and report risks in a timely manner. It would also be helpful to incorporate the Auditor General's prior relevant recommendations into its project management framework and apply it to all IT projects to ensure consistent application across the city. I'll now turn it over to Syed to walk through the next 2 themes. Can you do it? Okay, put your mic on.
Thank you, Madam Auditor General. I will now discuss findings related to project execution. We'll discuss in brief the implementation progress since 2013, cost and budget reporting, spending on unused licenses, and delays in adopting system features related to transportation services, winter 22-23 season, and also discuss risks related to continuing with legacy systems. So, the Auditor General has discussed the current implementation status earlier. This chart breaks down the various areas that have contributed to the major delays during 2013 to 2023, such as completion of procurement system installation and configuration. That's okay. The EWMS program has not reported all costs associated with the EWMS program to City Council. Historical costs under one project cost code amounting to 6.8 million were excluded. Management has advised this will be included in the future reports to City Council.
Yeah.
We also noted that need to align the cost and budget. So,
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry, one
sorry,
second,
yeah,
I'm just going to
yeah,
switch
yeah.
positions. Turn the mic on. Turn the mic on. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Auditor. Through you, Mr. Chair. So we also noted the need to align the cost and budget presented to Executive Steering Committee and City Council and present consolidated reporting on cross-divisional budget and cost to the city. Next slide, please. So, given the cost of deliverables descoped from the phase 1 and deferred to phase 2 and 3 of the remaining payment and the remaining payment to the existing vendor, the actual spend on phase 1 deliverables will exceed the budget by at least $7 million. Next slide, please. So there was underutilization of EWMS software licenses. Almost 60% of the EWMS licenses purchased were not being used. We identified $1.1 million in cost relating to these unused licenses. As of May 2023, a further delay in implementing the solution will add to the unutilized software license costs. Next slide, please. Although EWMS went live at Transportation Services in October 2022, this was a time of significant change for divisions, for the division, and not all system functions could be fully operationalized due to reasons such as contracts were only signed 1 month before go live, which did not provide Transportation Services staff enough time to revise current business processes. Role-based training curriculum tailored for each business role could not be completed prior to implementation, and paper and Excel-based forms were used for 22-23 winter season in lieu of full EWMS functionality. So, continuing with legacy systems present both operational and financial risks, such as a lack of vendor support may render these systems inoperable, which in certain circumstances could give rise to regulatory and compliance issues. In addition, the city may have to continue to pay for maintenance costs of the legacy systems plus the cost of the new EWMS system unless the legacy systems are decommissioned. So we have made recommendations to improve project execution going forward. Delays should be promptly escalated, and key checkpoints such as changes to business processes and preparation of staff training should be prepared and ready prior to planned implementation dates. Secondly, reporting of budget and actual costs should be consolidated and aligned with reporting to council as well as the steering committee dashboards. Thirdly, software acquisition is aligned with implementation timelines, and license utilization should be maximized to address underutilization costs. Lastly, plans should be made for prompt retirement of unsupported legacy systems. This should require implementing the new solution in a timely manner. I will now speak to one of the key risks that the EWMS program will need to manage in its next phases. Currently, EWMS is hosted on computer systems and servers that are operated on site versus on the cloud. The current software version will not be supported after September 2025. Upgrading EWMS software to the new version together with moving to the cloud is expected to be more complex and will also add risks to the ongoing implementation. There need to be a detailed risk assessment prepared along with mitigation plans to have a smooth transition. We have recommended preparing a detailed risk assessment and action plan to mitigate these risks. I now pass it over to Madam Auditor General.
Thank you, Syed. So it's important to remember that there are many benefits, financial and non-financial, of implementing the EWMS program with an integrated solution across divisions and using shared services, including 311 and SAP. However, project delays add risk to the project. Legacy systems not yet replaced represent a vulnerability. Increased costs can happen as delays continue. The intended benefits of integration, efficiencies, and improved equipment and materials management of not yet being achieved. And technology changes rapidly, so if projects are not executed quickly enough, the technology may need replacing before it has even gone live, and there are risks with the transition. Next slide, please. So this chart is an overview of the timing status of all technology services IT projects and shows that 64% have delays greater than 6 months, as reported in the Capital Variance Report to Executive Committee on October 11, 2023 for Q2 2023. And although these other IT projects are not in the scope of this audit, I'm highlighting this so that you can see the relevance and importance of applying the lessons learned from this audit to the city's other IT projects as well. Next slide, please. So in summary, we've provided 14 recommendations in our report to address the lessons learned and strengthen project planning, governance, execution, and risk management on not only the remaining phase 2 and 3 of the EWMS program, but also for all large IT projects of the city. Management has agreed with all of our recommendations and has a brief presentation following ours. We've also recommended the city manager to forward this report to the city's major agencies and corporations to consider applying these lessons learned to their IT projects. Next slide. So some of the key takeaways to keep in mind moving forward on these large IT projects are to, first of all, regularly engage and communicate with stakeholders involved and impacted. All program partners must be engaged in defining the budget, scope, timelines, and key deliverables. They must also understand the program risks, assumptions, and constraints. Regular communication will also help to ensure there is buy-in and avoid costly surprises from changes in the stakeholder plans for IT systems, as well as staying informed of operational risks that could impact the timing and success of implementation. Secondly, it's critical to measure implementation of the project's progress against clearly defined budgets and timelines, including a consolidated reporting of budgets and costs when there are multiple divisions. Accurate and regular monitoring and reporting will help to keep the project on time and minimize any delays. And third, keeping the project on time will not only help to minimize potential cost overruns, but also address the important risk of replacing unsupported legacy systems and help to realize the intended benefits of the project. Next slide. So thank you for your time and attention today. I'll now turn it over to management of the Technology Services Division for their presentation, and then we're available to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Welcome to the Audit Committee, Sonia Brar and Alan Foster. Please proceed when you're ready to begin.
Can you hear me okay? Oh, there we go. All right. Thank you for the opportunity for presenting here today. I do want to thank the AG and the team and all the divisions for the collaboration in establishing the recommendations. As the AG presented, we are in alignment and working closely on all of the learnings that have come through this audit. The reality is the recommendations are grounded in solid project management principles, and the implementation of those principles is already underway as we've been working through them collaboratively. Given the new leadership we have around the table, we thought it would make sense to review the EWMS program, why this is a critical investment and how it supports critical operations for the large divisions who are represented here today. I'll hand off to Alan Foster, who is a technology program director on on this particular program. Alan joined the city in 2020 from the TTC with extensive experience in large-scale technology transformations, and I have to say has done a tremendous job over the since then in the progress that we've made in the program, as you'll see as we go through the presentation.
Thank you, Sonia. Good morning, everyone. So today, this presentation will provide a brief overview of the transformation that EWMS will deliver, as well as the recommendations from the audit and our progress towards implementing the recommendations within the EWMS program and more broadly in other large, complex projects being managed by technology services. City divisions have relied on several work management systems to help manage the work associated with delivering service. These legacy systems operate independently and are now obsolete and in need of replacement. The city's business has also evolved, and the aging systems are difficult to upgrade to keep pace with the modernization of services. A 2007 audit recommended the city review the current legacy work management systems with a view towards reconciling and replacing them due to the risks they pose. You will hear the term work management used throughout this presentation and here today as well. Examples of work are maintaining trees, collecting garbage, responding to water main breaks, and responding to service requests and inquiries from customers. All of this represent work the city does. A community of practice was established in 2013 to begin to define the strategy for addressing these obsolete work management systems. This work was the impetus for the EWMS program as a foundational technology to enable and support the many services delivered by the city. In addition to the 2007 audit, there have been several other audits recommending improvements in system controls and compliance, service and contractor performance measurements, as well as improving the accuracy of the information that is provided to customers regarding service requests. Many of these recommendations have referred to the EWMS program as a means of addressing the recommendations by modernizing and transforming how we deliver services. Like many businesses, the city is faced with the challenge of keeping pace with an increasing demand for services. Part of keeping pace involves modernizing and transforming how we plan, schedule, and deliver services, and improving the accuracy of the information that is used to provide responses and status updates to customers. Being more effective also requires us to have access to better information related to how the assets are managing and how we are performing, and more importantly, squeezing more value from the assets by extending their useful life. As the name implies, EWMS is an enterprise-level system that will be used to manage the work performed by 4 of the city's largest divisions: solid waste, transportation services, PF&R, and Toronto Water. The system will be used by more than 4,000 city staff and contractors and will manage more than 750,000 assets valued at more than $100 billion. The system is based on IBM's Maximo technology platform and is being rolled out in 3 phases with a common approach to defining requirements, design, and implementation. The system is also integrated with a number of other city systems for purchasing, contracts, materials management, and 311, which allows the divisions to provide timely and accurate updates to customers via 311 call agents. Following program inception in 2012, we required 2 rounds of procurement to award a Phase 1 vendor contract for the base system and implementation services. The Phase 1 scope involves installing the base system with some common integrations and rolling out Maximo to a minimum 1 section within each of the 4 divisions. To date, we have rolled out to solid waste, transportation services in 2022, and are days away from the PF&R rollout that will occur in December. The Phase 1 rollout for Toronto Water will also occur later 2024 and early 2025. With this work behind us, we've started working on phase 2 and 3. We expect to have a new vendor contract established by mid-2024 in far less time than the 3.5-year period for the phase 1 procurement. With the new vendor contract in place, we expect to complete the planning for phase 2 and 3 in 2024. The planning exercise will inform the overall timeline and budget to complete phases 2 and 3. We've overcome a number of challenges to get where we are today. Throughout the entire project execution, we've applied learnings to improve on procurement timelines, completing the first implementation for solid waste in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and adopting new ways of working. Changes in leadership and turnover of key staff has also been problematic. We've stabilized the project team and governance structure, with leadership and collaboration being reinforced as a core principle from the executive right through the divisional steering committees and the frontline working groups. The rollout to solid waste management services and their facilities and equipment maintenance area and transportation services road operations has increased compliance, improved mobility tools to allow field staff to access job-related information while working in the field. We've also improved planning and scheduling and our ability collectively to calculate the cost of the work we are doing to help make decisions regarding how we better deploy the resources available to us. This phase 1 work has been difficult to deliver. However, the effort has set a solid foundation for the remaining program delivery in terms of the considerable technical infrastructure that is now in place. The approach we are now taking to define business processes and requirements upfront and how we manage and introduce a change to end users. The EWMS program is an enabler for customer service. The integration of 3-on-1 allows call center agents to send customer service requests to the respective divisions. The divisions then action these requests and report status information into the system, which automatically provides updates to 3-on-1, allowing call center agents to be better able to provide more accurate status updates to customers. While customers do not interact directly with EWMS, the system is an enabler to allow the city to further close the loop in responding to customer service requests. This means fewer reasons for customers to call back to 3-on-1. The system is also an enabler for future work to create a new self-serve option for customers to get service requests and work order information through web and mobile channels without the need to go through a 3-on-1 call center agent. Yet another modernization of the customer experience. Establishing the foundations laid in phase 1 is fundamental for the success of the remaining scope and eventual retirement and replacement of the current legacy systems. The phase 1 forecast will be adjusted by $7 million to account for the additional system enhancements, training and delivery, and changes to the rollout strategy for Toronto Water. We are reconciling this amount with the current budgets to determine the impact and will report back in Q2 of 2024. We also have an initial cost estimate for phase 2 and phase 3 of $33 million. Taking lessons from phase 1, we will update and confirm the cost of the phase 2 and phase 3 delivery when we have confirmed vendor pricing, and this will also be included in the Q2 2024 update. We've worked through a very difficult start for the program to establish the program foundation in phase 1. The rollouts to date and others to follow have come through improving program governance, improving how we plan and execute the program. We've also proactively identified and mitigated risk, and this is a key to our program success and execution. Project governance has also been strengthened. Our executive steering committee dashboard has been improved, and the committee has recently been expanded to include senior leadership from purchasing and finance in recognition of the large amount of procurement work that lies ahead and to increase the oversight of our budget. We've also improved how the program is planned by defining work processes upfront, along with business requirements, and confirming project timelines and cost estimates with accurate vendor costing during the planning stage. We've instituted a RAID log to capture risks, actions, issues, and decisions for the entire program. This has helped us to identify and better manage risks and issues before they impact us. This approach to risk management will serve us well in addressing the challenges that lie ahead with completing the program. Transitioning to the cloud and upgrading the system and software version are included amongst these challenges. The improved execution has resulted in 2 rollouts, and a third is days away. And the initial preparation work for the 4th rollout for Toronto Water is well underway. We've also taken lessons from the initial procurement by conducting a market sounding exercise earlier this year to gather vendor information to generate interest and enthusiasm amongst the vendor community. This has resulted in a dramatic reduction to the procurement timelines for our next vendor. I do want to thank the Auditor General and her staff for helping us and defining the 14 recommendations to help us to improve how the city manages large technology projects. Some recommendations have already been implemented, including improvements to program status package and the improved dashboard. We've also implemented a project management framework in 2021 and have made other improvements to project reporting throughout. The recommendation is to take the learnings from the EWMS program, and there are many, and apply them broadly across other technology projects, which we expect to complete by the end of 2024. I've talked a lot about automating operations and transforming to new and improved business models with improved analytics and technologies. Wrapped inside of those topics are the people, the leaders, staff, contractors, and vendors that are the enablers and drivers of the program. Understanding what digital means to the city is important for us. The leadership and governance at all program levels has driven a culture that has helped us to, and continues to help us to deliver the results. In terms of next steps, immediately for us, we will complete the recommendations from the audit for phases 2 and phases 3 scope, and we've already started applying these lessons. The rollout and recommendations to other large technology projects will also occur in parallel. We will report back in Q2 of 2024 with an update of program status. We will also have an update on program benefits and costing for the overall program as part of the Q2 2024 update. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to Alan and Sonia. Are there questions of staff? I have a couple. So if I understand this correctly, this is about asset management. In other words, the divisions were out tracking how they did work, which is really keeping an eye on the assets. So a decision was made back in 2012 to get people doing this the same way, because there's benefits to the enterprise to be consistent and to share information. Can you tell me where, I thought I read in here the budget went into 3 different places. Is that right? Like this project was broken up?
Yes.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. The budget was distributed amongst the divisions because it was seen as a divisional program. Since then, the budget has been largely consolidated into technology because it's being viewed as an enterprise program versus a divisional program.
So that's what I'm getting at. Technology Services Division is typically the entity that provides delivery, right? And upkeep and so on, right? You ensure this technology infrastructure is built and maintained. What does the project charter tell us about who owns this approach, right? It's an enterprise, it's almost a business decision that manifests itself in technology. So what do we know? What do those documents tell us?
Sure.
Sorry, through the chair. Our project charters will define that this is a shared responsibility.
Okay,
Certainly, there are lead managers within the respective divisions, and they manage their work. But truly, this is a shared responsibility across the city. The approaches that we take to managing work, there is some commonality and consistency there, but there are also individual differences. So it truly is a unique solution for each of the divisions. Technology services is the enabler of this. So we bring structure, we bring governance to the process, but the ownership of the actual business change is within the divisions. And through this program, because it is an enterprise system, we're certainly trying to leverage and find those places where we can apply common methods and common approaches to how service is being delivered.
so typically any project, has a sponsor or a guardian or, somebody that is in charge that's asking for it to be done. And then there are a whole bunch of players in it, including people like divisions who are in some ways customers or consumers of the service. So this project, phase one went over budget by $7 million. So if I wanted to ask someone the question, you're responsible, why did this happen? Who in the organization do I point to and ask that question?
Through the chair, I think ultimately because TSD is accountable for the rollout and the execution, we would be accountable to report out where the money is being spent, although it is a shared accountability. So, I mean, this is a large business transformation,
Right.
not a technology program.
Right.
As Alan mentioned, the technology enables business transformation, which is replacing legacy systems, replacing legacy manual work, and looking at how we can best operate end to end. So when we say shared accountability, I would say it's about 40% on the division, 60% on technology. But part of the AG recommendations is that we consolidate and report out in one place.
Right.
And so I think we should look to technology to report out where the costs are going and to be able to present that information back and respond to it.
So in terms of governance, do we still have a situation where we've got everybody yet nobody accountable?
Through the chair, I don't believe so.
Okay.
So we do have, as Alan mentioned, a very good governance structure, not reflected in the way I think the AG has recommended, but inside the team, we do have an executive steering committee, as well as divisional steering committees, and we have very good working relationships with each of the divisions. So I would say we have accountability where it needs to be. Okay. What we need to do, though, is better reflect that in our reporting to make sure it's visible and transparent.
Okay, so you have confidence that the governance has been brought back into something that is easier for council to deal with and to trace money, to trace budget and responsibility. Even though this is a business transformation, it's still heavily rooted in technology. You're comfortable with where we're at today?
I am, yes.
Are there other things happening in the city, other projects that are parallel, where we've got that situation of everybody yet nobody, that the learnings of this will help apply to? And do you need anything from the Audit Committee to ensure that that happens?
Through the chair, we do have a list of other technology projects, whether they are led by TSD or they're led by divisions. We do have a consolidated list that would follow a similar, in terms of size and scope and transformation, that we are rolling out these recommendations to.
Thank you. My time is up. Are there any other questions from any other members? Seeing none to speak, any members? I'll speak very briefly. I thank both Madam Auditor General and your team, and of course, Technology Services Division to talk to us about this. Technology projects don't attract headlines in newspapers. They didn't even generate a lot of discussion at Audit Committee, but there's a lot of money involved in this particular report. But there's a really important piece in there, and that is about the evolution of enterprise projects. Things that cause our entire business across the city to change. And, sometimes there's a tendency to kind of blame one person or the other about where a project goes. And so, my read of this report, although there's some criticism of the evolution of this particular set of software over time, I see there's a really big change in governance here, and I think that's incredibly important. somebody needs to own the transformation of the business and the approach to agreement among divisions to start working together congruently in how they track cities' assets. Because we have to do that in order to be custodians and responsible caretakers of public assets. So I laud everyone that has committed to this report, and really, there's no motion here, but really it's just an ask that if there are weaknesses or deficiencies or inconsistencies in the public service about applying good governance to projects like this, please come back and bring a report to us and let us know how we can help. Because I think, you know, there's more to be done with respect to big transformations, not just on asset management, but in other concepts in the city. Whether it's service excellence or managing customers directly, there's all kinds of different enterprise approaches that are happening. And it's important that everybody works along with this, but also that there's clear distinction on who's responsible for what. And that makes for better project management and better management of precious public resources, be it the end product or just the money involved in implementing the project. So thank you, everyone. With that, is there a member of the committee that would like to move the recommendations? If not, I will, Councillor Nunziata moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor, any opposed, and that item carries. Thank you. All right, we are on to the final item. And that is AU 3.5, update to winter maintenance program follow-up, change in contract terms. Councillor Fletcher had held this item. Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Pardon me one moment. Madam Auditor General has just requested to make some brief opening remarks. I will turn the floor to Madam Auditor General, and then we'll go to questions. Councillor Fletcher, you're first.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is to provide an update to information included in my June 28, 2023 report on winter maintenance program follow-up, status of previous Auditor General's recommendations, and processes to hold contractors accountable to new contract terms. This report provides City Council through Audit Committee with information about changes to the liquidated damages clause in the current winter maintenance contracts related to mobilization of equipment within 2 hours of notification, item number 6. The liquidated damages contract terms have been changed from $200 a minute to $10 a minute plus the daily rate. Just a reminder that liquidated damages are a means of reimbursing the city for reasonable costs incurred by the city when a contractor fails to meet certain contract requirements and deliverables. The amounts recovered through the liquidated damages process do not increase the council-approved contract award value or the annual budget for winter maintenance services. Although there is no change to the contract value or budget, the financial difference is about $5.5 million for the 2 months of February and March 2023, when the divisions started to apply liquidated damages this past year. The proposals to amend the contracts were formally communicated to the contractors by Transportation Services in September 2023 and agreed in principle shortly thereafter. And amending agreements were drafted and sent out recently. It's important to note that the properly supported liquidated damages amounts should have been in place prior to the NRFP for this current contract cycle. During the Q&A portion of the NRFP, the bidders expressed that the liquidated damages were unreasonable and asked the city to make adjustments. The division did not agree to the change at that time, and that information was available to all of the bidders of the NRFP at that time. Management has advised us that after a recent reassessment, they found an error had been made in those previous calculations, and based on their reassessment, they have reduced the liquidated damages. The revised liquidated damages terms are now, just to note that they're now the same as those of the previous winter maintenance contracts, so $10 a minute plus the daily rate. And that's all. Open up for questions.
Thank you, Madam Auditor. First set of questions, Councillor Fletcher, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for that very succinct clarification of what happened. But now I'm quite interested in there was a question about the $200 a minute when the bidders were there for the information sessions, and it indicated that was too high. And there was a refusal to change it at that time. Did I hear you say that?
That's correct.
Sorry, who's saying
Oh,
that?
through the chair, that's correct.
Oh, okay. So, and what was it previously for the other previous contracts?
So through the chair,
Previous-
for the previous winter maintenance contracts, it was the $10 a minute plus a daily rate. So it's the same as what it was before now.
So when the bidders came for the information session, they must have been surprised to see that it was no longer $10. It had been hoisted to $200.
Yeah, that's a question for management.
On what basis was it changed?
Getting a management response, Councillor?
And assumed to be reasonable, and assumed to be reasonable.
Good morning, through the chair. So during the procurement process, we received some questions prior to the bids being submitted with respect to liquidated damages and requesting if the staff had any intention of doing any review at that time. That was prior to all the bids being submitted. At that time, our response was no. The audit recommendation in 2020, number 11, did recommend that we do a reassessment of all of our liquidated damages, specifically number 6. And then when the auditor did her review in the summer of 2023, she indicated that this particular recommendation was incomplete. So based on the Auditor General's recommendations, and then after we issued the liquidated damages in April, at that point, the contractors requested that we also reassess liquidated damage number 6.
Sorry. So you're saying that you raised it to $200 a minute on the advice of the Auditor General? Previous report.
No. Through the,
I'm sorry, it was difficult to hear the question, Councillor.
What I heard you say is that it went from $10 to $200 a minute based on the previous Auditor General
No.
report that suggested you needed to update your liquidated damages. Is that correct? Did I hear that correctly?
Through the Councillor, no, that is not correct. The $200 original liquidated damage for number 10 was not based on the Auditor General's advice or recommendation. It was an error that was committed by staff, and hence this liquidated damage reassessment is a correction of an error.
Just back to the Auditor General, was that well, I'll ask you. I understood the Auditor General, I'm sorry to be remote, it's so hard to do this dialogue remotely, that the Auditor General said when everybody was meeting about, pre-qualifications or pre-bidding, the $200 amount was known, and there was an concern among those who might be bidding that was too high. Is that your recollection?
so through the chair, yes, in the Q&A portion of the NRFP, the bidders did express that the $200 a minute liquidated damages were unreasonable and asked the city to make an adjustment, but an adjustment was not made. So, and just to provide clarity in terms of our previous recommendation, it was to ensure that the liquidated damages amounts are properly supported. So those should be properly supported before entering the NRFP.
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean by properly supported. What does that mean?
So as I mentioned in my opening remarks, liquidated damages are the amount that the city would reasonably incur because of the contractors not delivering. And so when figuring out what that amount should be, it should be properly supported in order to apply those liquidated damages. And so from our viewpoint, that needed to still happen, and that was why we had that recommendation.
But it wasn't suggesting to increase it by
No.
many percent. No. And so just, I guess then I'll just go back and ask Mr. Sferza if the Auditor General is clear that questions were raised and then you've now said it was a mistake. I'm concerned that that mistake was not caught and or responded to at the NRFP stage. Why didn't
So through this chair, at the time, we did not have information to provide that type of analysis that the questers had made. The contractors had signed the agreement recognizing that the $200 amount for liquidated damage 6 was in their contracts. It was after the actual liquidated damage was applied in April that the contractors brought it to our attention, requesting that we review liquidated damage number 6 on the basis that it was not fair and reasonable. And it was during that exercise that we then determined that we made an error and that this is a correction of the error.
I'm going
just remind me-
to, Councillor, I'm just going to stop there, just in terms of time to give someone else a chance. I am more than
sorry.
happy to come back for more questions.
I can't see my clock, so thank you. I'm happy to stand down, Chair.
We'll come back for a second round for sure. Okay, any questions from other members? Councillor Nunziata?
Okay, so to staff, what you just commented, so the contractor at the time, even though it was indicated, made an error as well because he didn't realize that was 200. So they made an error saying, but then when they realized, when they seen it, that no, we made an error and it shouldn't have been $200.
Through the chair, I won't be able to speak on behalf of the
No, I
contractors.
mean, but it sounds like it. I mean, you know.
There is this possibility that that may have been the case. I don't have any information to verify that, but they did reassess it after we applied the liquidated damage. And it was at that point that we were able to identify the error and make the correction accordingly.
Okay, so on the report to the auditor where it says financial impact, there's been no financial impact on this.
So there's no financial impact in terms of the budget or the contract award value, but it is still a significant difference. So it's $5.5 million difference compared to what previously would have been charged for just those 2 months compared to now with the new terms. So I felt that it was important enough to report
But, okay,
that
just
information.
explain that for the 2 months, So, but there was no money exchanged, nothing was paid, right?
So, correct. So
Like
for,
this, so there's, nobody paid the invoice or whatever, right? So how
so
could
the
you have?
previous amount charged under the terms in the contract was
Yeah.
about 6 million compared to about, or 6 million and something and change compared to 600,000 under the new terms for those 2 months. So a difference, approximately 5.5 million for 2 months.
So if I can just have the staff comment on that?
So through the chair, so to Councillor Nunziata, the liquidated damages are not a revenue source. They are
An offset.
offset for a breach of contract to cover off what an estimated cost for what it would be for staff to go back and correct that issue. So we were never entitled to the $5 million. It would have been the negotiated term in the contract that was put in error is the beast that we corrected so that we have an accurate and supportable liquidated damage for number 6, which is time to leave the yard, for the remainder of the contracts, 7 or 8 years.
So there was no financial loss then?
No.
No.
Financial
So
impact.
can you explain to the auditor, how did this come forward? Was there a complaint?
So through the chair, we became aware of this information through a complaint made to the hotline. And so we then gathered further information from Transportation Services and did request that it be reported to City Council. It's not legally required to be reported to City Council because it does not impact the contract award value. However, it does impact what we reported through my follow-up report in June, and I did not feel that waiting until after this winter season would be prudent in terms of the spirit of transparency in my reporting to City Council.
So do we know who complained?
That's confidential.
It's confidential? Even if we went in camera, you couldn't tell us?
I'd have to check. Generally that type of information would be
Well,
confidential.
usually if
'cause
somebody
there's a risk.
complains, so we know who complained.
Either way, the information came about, and it was true that liquidated damages had been changed, so.
Sorry, through the,
I don't understand. Okay.
well, through the speaker, to the Auditor General's point, the communication of this information and the error and the correction was something that staff had intended to do through the Auditor General's annual update as management response to the issue that was raised through the 2020 review. So they put forth that information, and as you know, the Auditor General does an update every year on outstanding management responses. When we reviewed the response from this past year, we noted that the auditor said this was incomplete because that we had not done the assessment of these liquidated damage amounts, and so our plan was to do that, which we've done. We were alerted to and made the correction, and that we would come back for the next update of that report in the management response and give a full update of that. And the Auditor General really thought it was more appropriate to flag this for council before the beginning of the new winter season. So that's why we have the report before you.
So it's here because somebody complained and we don't know who the complainant is. Okay.
Thank you. Are there questions from other members? Okay, I'm going to take a chance to ask a couple, and then we'll check to see if there's a second round. Do I understand this right to staff? Table 1 talks about liquidated damages. So my read is the estimate, if all of it had occurred according to contract, was $37,629,000. Is that correct?
The estimate for the liquidated damage cost?
Number 6, item 6, the theoretical estimate is $37,629,000. Madam Auditor, you can clarify as well if that's, it's in the report here.
Yes, so the amount of the 37.6 million was the total from October to April if item 6 had been applied.
Right.
And then it was later reduced to 7.3 million in terms of the communication to contractors as at June 1st, 2023, and then further decreased to 6 million as at September 2023. And now it's 600,000.
The amount communicated to contractors wasn't 37 million, it was 17.3 million. And so what, did you send bills for 17.3 million?
If I may, yeah, through the chair. When there's a liquidated damage,
Yep.
a report is sent to the contractors informing them of a liquidated damage that has occurred. And we did that to all the contractors in April and May. At that point, the contractors exercised a dispute resolution process that was within the agreement to further discuss and understand the nature of the liquidated damages. And then throughout the spring and summer, we continued having conversations with the contractors through the dispute resolution process. And in those discussions, it was reduced based on different factors, whether there was sufficient information to justify or to correct the initial application of the liquidated damage.
So brought down to 6 million.
It was brought down to approximately 6 million as of September, correct?
At the rate of $200 per minute.
At the rate of $200 per minute.
So there's bills out there. Have they been paid?
So, no, they have not been paid because they were not yet totally all resolved. After we introduced this proposal for $10 per minute and the loss of the daily rate, the liquidated damage were then reassessed based on the new proposed rate. So we now have a revised number based on the $10 and daily rate amount, which still hasn't been paid, but will be deducted from monthly invoice payments.
So at the reduced rate, it goes from 6 million to about 600,000, about 10%, even though the per minute rate's about 1/20th. So you're factoring in the daily rate.
Right. So
This is retroactive?
it would be retroactive to the original liquidated damages that were applied in March and April, correct?
What is the gross value of winter maintenance for last year? I understand it's variable, approximately.
The gross value, are you
Yeah,
referring to?
how much was all the contracts paid to the contractors? So I want to compare that to the 37
The
million.
total budget, I don't have that answer readily available. We do
Give me a
have the
range?
budget, but we don't have the
Approximate
invoice.
range? Order of magnitude?
So to you, Chair, our expected expenditure under the winter contracts for the whole of 2023 at year end, we're currently projecting $116.3 million.
116.3.
Correct.
So the liquidated damages by the original numbers of the contract was 37.6 million on a $116 million contract.
No, if I may, through the chair, correct that. The 37 million that the Auditor General identifies are theoretical based on possible liquidated damages in the first few months. So they were never even applied.
I understand, but if we didn't change anything, if the city doesn't change anything and the performance last year reflects the next year, what I'm saying is $37 million on a $116 million contract is the proportion we're talking about under the old numbers.
Okay, well, again, the old numbers were not correct with
Understood.
respect to the liquid damage, and the city was never entitled to receiving 37 million, 17 million, or any figure under the $200 per minute LD.
I have more questions, but it's not my turn. I will ask other members if they wish to ask questions. Councillor Fletcher, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to be clear from the Auditor General, the Fraud and Waste Hotline is an anonymous hotline, is it not?
Through the chair, yes, it is.
So any conversation, if you were to give us the name here, you'd have to give us the name of anybody that called. Is the whole idea not that you can call in and you're not saying your name, and then you have to decide, you have to wait and see, well, that one, we're interested in this one, there's some substance to that, and et cetera. But to assume that you can actually give out a name, I want to be very clear on that.
Yeah, so through the chair, that's correct, that people can choose to remain anonymous when they report through our fraud and waste hotline. And just to be clear, this is not an investigation report at all. It's not about an allegation. This is just about information that is factually correct that has changed in terms of the contract terms.
And if there hadn't been a whole report and a lot of controversy around the snow letting contract, you might not have brought this separately, or am I right about that? Or you might have just waited to fold it in annually?
Through the chair, if the amount had not been so financially significant, then perhaps I would have waited to July, or if management had reported it already through City Council, I would not have provided this report.
So it's really got to do with the amount of what was expected or what would have been due under the NRFP, because I'm just going to go back to that despite the fact it was raised by contractors that was out of sync with previous numbers, department determined to proceed with the $200 a minute in the legal document and the legal contract, correct?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Can you repeat that again? What's the question?
Sorry, that the $200 a minute was in the legal contract. You bid on that. You bid on that knowingly. So you'd have to assume that you were obligated for that.
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct. The contract term was $200 a minute, but as management stated, they felt that was done in error and then revised it.
Have you asked, because you've heard that it was raised as an issue, but it was never changed until how long later? The contract was given out at what date and when was this changed, please? Timing.
Just through the chair, just recently, I believe it was September of this year.
When was the contract bid on and awarded? Last year, 22.
I'm going to just refer to Ina Chan,
December of
Deputy Auditor
2021.
General. She's online there, if you want to add, Ina.
For the chair contract, the contract was awarded December 2021.
Okay, so the contract's awarded December 2021. Prior to that, there are contractors that said $200 a minute, no good, can't do it, that's too much. Division just said, well, we're proceeding. Apparently, I don't know who's at those meetings. And then 2 years later, it's now determined that had been dropped to $10. And there's a significant funding relationship to that, $195 from what was bid on. So besides the money, is there any kind of concern? I don't mean in an investigatory way, but I'll call it sloppy procurement. Can I call it that?
Through the chair, I would not call it sloppy procurement.
Okay.
I would say that it was as part of the process that we go through. Procurement processes are very lengthy, and as much due diligence as we can is reviewed for the questions that we receive from the bidders, as well as just the general proper nature of reviewing the requirements before we go out. In this situation, it was an error that was made that is currently being rectified. And just to confirm also, it is fully within the right of the divisions to do amendments to their contracts when there is no financial implication, which in this case, as noted by my colleagues here, liquidated damages is not a revenue. It is not an expected form of value to the city. It is a method to correct a breach of contract.
I hear you, but when I don't know who was advised that $10 was the standard and that it was changed, that was being changed to 200 and there was concerns. Was that not brought to the attention of senior folks on this procurement? That's a fairly big change in a procurement. My next question is going to be to you, Auditor General. Do you happen to know what that liquidated damages number is in other municipalities?
So through the chair, Transportation Services did share their information they did in their reassessment of their jurisdictional review. So $10 a minute was pretty consistent with many other jurisdictions. And if management wants to add to that, feel free.
Through the chair, there's been reference to pre-consultation and pre-conferences. Just to clarify, during the procurement process, the contractors have opportunities to ask questions with respect to the procurement document. In this case, they're referred to as an addendum. In this particular matter, they did not indicate whether they found the amount to be unreasonable, unfair. We were requested in that addendum to reassess it, to look into it. At that time, our answer was no. But having applied the liquidated damage in April, and after conducting then a reassessment of the analysis of what the pre-estimate quantum would be for costs incurred by the city as a result of a breach of agreement, $10 per minute was the supportable amount that we determined through our analysis.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to belabor this, but it was raised that it was too much, and I don't know why it was never communicated that it wasn't the industry standard and why that went in at $200, whose decision that was. But to me, it's a procurement matter here that it's such a large number. It's quite odd that that was the number that went in. So I'm concerned about that. But the Auditor General, if I don't mind answering this, Madam Auditor General, you indicated that there were issues raised at the level of the NRFP with bidders around the change, correct? How do you know that?
Through the chair, so there is public information in terms of the Q&A on the NRFP process.
So that's how you know that.
Yeah, Ina, is there anything else to add there? No?
So through the chair, the questions and answers that are published in the addendums to the NRFPs indicated that the liquidated damages table item 6, failure to leave a depot within the mobilization period of $200 per minute, that one of the suppliers that had raised that question indicated were, quote, ridiculous and must be revived. Will the city change the notification period to 2 hours? Will the city change the penalty to $10 per minute as it has been for the past 6 years? And the response was that the city will not consider revising the liquidated damages table.
So I just want to be clear. One more question. I'm done. That at that meeting, the NRFP meeting, was that just with procurement or was that with transportation services staff? Who was there from the city side at answering the questions?
Ina, are you able to answer that?
If
That question, I think, is for management to answer. Management typically provides responses through PMMD for questions that are raised by potential suppliers, and then PMMD issues addendums with those questions and answers as part of the normal process of procurement.
So can I have, management answer that? Just make sure you got the microphone nice and close.
So, through the chair, these questions are actually written-in questions that we receive through our system. Questions are received by PMMD, and correct, they are reviewed with the subject matter experts, in this case, transportation. And they're the ones who provide the guidance on how to properly respond.
Thank you.
So there still is, was that decision made by somebody at 80 Booth Street? Where was that decision made that this NRFP would stand?
Last question.
$200? Management decision.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? You cut in and out for a
Well, I
second.
know it goes to transportation services, but I don't think it goes to my guys down at Booth Avenue. So I'm at, what is it? A management decision, top decision? Whoever wrote the RFP? Are they responding? I'm new on this committee. I'm very interested in RFPs and procurement, as you're all going to find out.
Through the chair, when we did receive these questions through the procurement process, it was management decision to indicate if in fact there would be any changes or not. We did not change, as I said before, the $200 amount at that time, but we did change the mobilization period. So the actual liquidated damage is based on the equipment being deployed from the yard within a specific mobilization period. That is one change we did make during the addendum process.
Councillor Crisanti.
Appreciate that. So I want to start with this question. Can you please identify who are the parties to this contract, to this agreement? Who are I think I know the answer, but I just want to air it out. Who are the parties?
Through the chair, the parties are the contractors that are awarded the contract to execute the service and the City of Toronto Transportation Services.
Okay, so but in this case, there are two parties to this agreement, the contractor and the city. That's it, right?
That is correct.
So how long after the contract was awarded did we or someone identify that there's a problem with the liquidated damages amount?
So the actual amount was raised after we had first applied the liquidated damages in the spring. So when we did the calculation based on the $200 per minute, and we informed the contractors of the amount, it was at that point that the contractors asked us to reevaluate liquidated damage number 6.
And that's the number of months after the contract was awarded, correct?
That is correct.
All right, no, we're not talking years here, just a number of months. So I have to ask this question. Why is it here at this committee, if this is an internal, sounds like an internal problem, you have an agreement that's been approved between two parties, there's an error in the agreement, it got caught, it got corrected, end of story, no? Why is it here?
So
Anybody know?
through the
We're taking a
chair,
lot of time for something here, so.
through the chair, as I mentioned earlier, I provided this report for information only so that City Council through Audit Committee could be aware of this significant change in the contract term. Although there is no financial impact in terms of the contract award value or the budget, it is still a significant change financially. And it does affect the accuracy of my previous report that I provided, and I didn't feel that it would be in the spirit of transparency or prudent to wait until July of next year after the winter season to provide that information.
Okay, no financial impact to the city. We confirmed that, correct?
No financial impact in terms of the contract value or the budget, but there is a change that is financially significant, I would say.
So you're just bringing it to our attention because of the significant number went from $200 to $10, which is what it should have been from the very start.
I can't comment on that, but yeah, that was a management decision.
$10.
Yes.
Has this happened before? This type of an error? And not for liquidated damages necessarily, but an error that is of a significant nature, or is this a first?
Through the chair, I'm not sure if that has been reported on by previous Auditor Generals, but I just felt that it was important to be able to provide that information.
So can I describe it as an honest error? Like it just wasn't caught? No?
Can anyone answer that from staff?
It's just an honest error. Like it just, nobody,
Through the chair, there were calculations behind the $200 a minute, and in the NRFP Q&A, management decided not to change them at that time, even though they knew that there was the bidders were not happy in terms of the amount and felt that it was unreasonable.
but as soon as it was brought to the attention to management, it got corrected without any further debate, discussion, or argument, if I could put it that way.
Well,
It's probably, management could better respond to when, who, where, and what. Particularly the mechanism, I think I'm
Through the
playing it
chair.
back, the mechanism post-contract start at which this commenced.
Through the chair, again, the $200 original liquidated damage was not supportable. There was no analysis that I could bring forward to support the $200. It was an error, and this is a correction of an error. There is no financial, there's no financial impact, and I would suggest that while it is a significant change in the terms of $200 to $10, there is no financial significance, and that this is now based on analysis that is reasonable and fair and supportable.
I accept that, Mr. Chair, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
I just have one question.
Councillor
Okay,
Nunziata.
because I've heard from the auditor, financial impact. Okay, and what we're hearing, there is no financial impact. So the question is, are you saying this because when we approved the budget, that it was identified as the total budget, that the total budget for the year would change? Is that what you're saying?
through the chair, no, I'm
Like,
not
I
saying
mean, how does
that,
it have a
although-
financial impact when when it wasn't included, and it's not, it wasn't part of their budget?
Through the chair, as stated, there is no impact in terms of the contract award value or the budget.
So what do you mean by
However,
when you
the
say there's a
bidders would have
financial
considered
impact?
this amount of liquidated damages in determining their fees for the winter maintenance contracts at the time of the NRFP. Now they have lowered the liquidated damages amounts that they will be required to pay.
Right.
And there is a financially significant difference in what they would have been required to pay versus what they would be required to pay now.
I understand that, but does that mean that that was included in their budget, that that the contract will be reduced because of the revenue coming in from $200 a minute? I don't know if this makes sense or not, but I mean, so where's the financial impact?
Yeah, I've already answered that question, so.
Well, I just don't understand it. Okay.
I'm going to take a chance to ask my second round of questions. I've got three. I'll ask the hard ones up front. The liquidated damage went from a theoretical 37.6 million down to 17 million, down to 6, now down to about 600,000. If I'm a plow contractor, what incentive is left for me to leave the yard on time? And how can the committee be assured that we are going to see good performance? That's a general question. And how are we going to feel assured that we're recouping appropriate damages?
Through the chair, the agreement has a section that pertains specifically to disincentives and incentives, and they're based on performance. So the contractors are obliged to fulfill those specific requirements based on meeting a maximum operating time and also a performance outcome in terms of the result of the service. If they fail to meet those specific requirements, then there is a price adjustment associated specifically with that performance or lack of performance. So the agreement, in fact, does have many aspects to it to hold the contractors accountable to specific requirements as it pertains to performance with respect to having the equipment deployed within a sufficient time. It's certainly in the interest of not just the city, but of the contractors to leave the yards within the time that's allowed to them so that, in fact, they can meet their maximum operating time to satisfy all the performance requirements. In addition to that, there have been some strategies and methods that we're applying this year to address issues of yard congestion and how we call out the equipment so as that the contractor, in fact, will be able to leave the yard within the mobilization period. So this has been an important aspect for us throughout the spring and summer, which we have been discussing with the contractors. And we believe that the changes that we've made will, in fact, help all the parties meet the liquidated damage number 6 and the performance outcomes of the contract.
So this is a change that benefits
Yes.
the contractors.
I'm sorry?
This is a change that benefits the contractors. The amount that they potentially would have to pay in a situation goes down.
Again, a liquidated,
Let me just finish,
Yes.
if I may. Right, it's a dollar value, it's a reduction. I can see the numbers on the page. What's in it for the city? Is there opportunity, we as a customer are working with our vendor to deal with a matter. What benefit comes to us? What's the quid pro quo?
the quid pro quo, again, is to recognize that the liquidated damage is not an incentive. It is not to be used as a disincentive. Legally, it is to essentially cover the pre-estimated quantum for the costs associated to staff's time and services to address a breach in the agreement.
Okay.
So as a result of that, we believe that the $10 amount does in fact reflect our costs and in fact are reasonable as it relates to the specific breach.
Okay, last question. Take me through the $10 and explain to me why I should be confident that that's the right number. What are the ingredients to that number so that anyone looking at this understands? Because I think I heard you say you couldn't explain the 200, unless you can try now, but at least explain the $10 to me.
So staff reassessed the amount specifically based on staff time and equipment required to reconcile the damage or the breach that was a result of them being late. It also includes a risk premium to account for the safety of the public impacted by the late deployment. So once again, it's staff time, the equipment that would be used to rectify the situation as a result of the late deployment, and a risk premium to account for the safety of the public. This is the math that we conducted that then came up with the $10 amount.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Are there, I'll open up the committee. Is there a third round? Any desire for that? Seeing none, members to speak?
Well,
Councillor
I'll
Nunziata?
I'll just move receipt of the report. Sounds to me it was just an error, clerical error, and,
Any other
I
members?
don't think there's, as it was indicated, there's no financial impact on this report.
Any other members wishing to speak? Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, and I concur with Councillor Nunziata. There's no financial impact of any kind to our budget, our City of Toronto. I sort of liken this to when you go to a car rental agency, Mr. Chair, and you're renting a car and they have a stipulation in the agreement, the fine print that says that over a number of kilometers, you're going to pay an extra $1 or $2, whatever that number is per kilometer. And for some reason in that fine print, that $1 or $2 is more like $100 or $200. And so it's only caught at the time that you are taking your car in and you're about to pay your bill, and then you fall off your chair saying, no, there's something wrong here. So it looks like all eyes are on it. The Auditor General involved and saw it. It's been reviewed thoroughly. So I think we've exhausted this. I think receiving this item for information is the right thing to do.
Thank you. Other members wishing to speak?
Yes, I'll speak, Chair.
Okay, I think I
Thank
caught
you.
Councillor Fletcher first and then Councillor Myers. Thank you. Please go ahead, Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you. I just want to say that, thank you, Auditor General, for clarifying that councillors can't go into private and ask who called the fraud and waste hotline, as much as we might like to know. That is an important clarification today for the committee and all the committee members. While there may not be a material financial amount, the Auditor General has said it was financially significant change. So I think my understanding, Mr. Chair, of this committee isn't just are we saving nickels and dimes, it's what the financial implications of different decision making, if there's a financially significant change, we should know about that, and also any procurement issues. And I appreciate your example, Councillor Crisanti, about going and renting a car and then being shocked about the fine print. I think that's happened to all of us. But this is not a car rental situation. This was a procurement situation with a Q&A at the level of the NRFP, where issues were raised about the $200 a minute being unreasonable and not possible to meet or match and onerous. That was discarded. It wasn't a mistake. It was said, sorry, we believe in $200. I've heard that through PPMD. It's not a mistake that, oh, we had an error, we're crossing it out. Somebody said, we're going with the $200 in this procurement situation. The industry standard is $10. That's what we've determined. It's a $10 industry standard. The city decided to put in its procurement $200 a minute instead of $10. There was questions raised by contractors. They were disregarded. We maintained the 200, and that contract was let in December 2021. Here we are 2 years later, and hearing that those changes were made because indeed it was too onerous. So I appreciate the changes were made. I appreciate that it wasn't the right number to start with, but I do have a problem, Mr. Chair, with calling it a mistake when it was clearly pointed out. And so I do thank the Auditor General. Financially significant change orders are important to know. And no matter whether we're sitting here at the Audit Committee, whether we're on the TTC, whether we're on any of the large corporations' hydro, the change orders and making changes after something has been let are important things to know about. And I think that next time, if there's questions about the industry amount, $10 versus 200, that I would assume now that staff would be taking those a little more seriously than they did at the time that those were raised. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Vice Chair Myers?
Chair, through you, I'll keep my comments brief. I just wanted to say one, thank you very much, General, for this report and for staff working on to fix this mistake. So I agree, that this was a mistake, obviously, but I think part of the reason councillors are having problems with the going from $200 to it was just because of the lack of the poor service received experience in last year's winter. And I think that's what's making this harder to digest, understand liquidated damages. They're just, however,
Sorry, Vice Chair, we're losing your microphone. If you could just get a little closer.
I'm going to turn off the camera. No, so I just think that it was because of the level of service that was provided last year that makes us a bit less perhaps charitable, understanding that, this is not the purpose of liquidated damages, but to the, the contractors, I see the snow from my window, and I think the expectation is they really need to up their game this winter, because there are other provisions in the contract to enforce damages. And if the performance is anything like last year's winter, I will be first to be beating that drum that the damage clause needs to be enforced. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to provide a chair's advisory to the members. The clerk has let me know that a motion to receive is not in order. At minimum, we need to send the item to council with recommendations around maintaining the confidentiality of. I'll just get the clerk to clarify.
There's no confidential attachment. No, there's not. It's okay.
Okay, nope, I have to cancel the advice, but I'm going to change it anyways because I'm going to speak, and I actually have a motion for a report. So I'll start my time. Mr. Clerk, if you can show it. Okay, I'll just. Councillor, the clerk advised me there was further advice that the motion to receive is in order, but I'm going to be moving a report request. So let me go through that and then we'll talk about it. So I wanted to ask that a report come back about winter maintenance, about the impacts of these changes, and about productivity in a year's time. And I'll just elaborate to say that this particular contract is really important to citizens of the city. We can't get around, emergency service vehicles can't get around, we can't go through our daily lives. Winter clearing impacts the economic vitality of our city. It impacts our enjoyment. So it shouldn't be any surprise that lots of councillors are worried about it. And they're worried about how contracts unfold and how the performance is done, because we want citizens to be happy, we want them to be confident in government, we want them to be confident that council made the right choices. It also shouldn't be lost that this contract is worth $1.5 billion over 10 years. It's just kind of a gross number that's in the documentation. We know that it varies from year to year, but it's big, big dollars. It's also important to note that we were talking about theoretically $37 million on a $116,000 per annum contract. So these are large numbers. I think it's important for this committee to continue to maintain an interest in winter maintenance. I think it's important for this committee to signal that the performance of the contractors and the performance of our Toronto City staff in managing the contract is important to us. And I won't be surprised if, when this goes to council, there's more questions about it, because this is just a sampling of councillors here, but many will have similar questions. So, in essence, even just asking for the report allows the staff to do their job, which is to manage this contract, and they are in process of doing that right now. But the motion suggests that we hear a little bit more in a year's time about how this continues to unfold, and we'll see where we're at after this winter. But I want to make sure that this committee continues to show interest, because it's important to everyone. So I hope you'll support my motion for a report back. It doesn't change anything today, but it gives us a chance to talk about this again in a year's time. With that, I'll thank everyone that worked on this report. As you can see, it generated a lot of interest here, and it's important. Thank you. Are there any questions of the mover? Seeing none. On the amendment, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. On the item as amended, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Mr. Clerk, I'm going to confirm with you that was our last item of business. That is it. So meeting adjourned, and thank you to everyone today for your support and your participation.
Thank you.